Good morning. My name is Rochelle Davis. I'm the director of the Center for Contemporary Arab Studies, as well as an associate professor here. I think I know many of you. And it's really exciting for us to be working with the Gulf International Forum to bring Dr. Hend Al-Muftah today to speak to you. And I'll introduce Dr. Hend. She will speak, and then we will open the floor to questions. So Her Excellency Dr. Hend Al-Muftah is a member of the Qatari Shura Council. She's also the Vice President of Administration and Finance at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies, and she's an Associate Professor in the Public Administration Program. I know she said she was getting emails from her students as she was on the plane, so her life never stops. Dr. Al-Muftah obtained her PhD from the University of Exeter in 2004 with a focus on the human capital in Qatar. She's published her research in a number of academic journals as well. And she's also held several managerial positions at Qatari University and has been an associate professor at the university since 2010. She's also been active not only as a professor, but also in working in Qatar in a number of national committees, notably the Commission on the Development of Qatari University and a Committee on Labor Market Strategy in Qatar in collaboration with the World Bank and the Qatar National Development Strategy. So we look forward to her speaking about the changing role of women in the GCC today and to your questions. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm really so excited and very, very happy to be here with you to speak to such distinguished colleagues and future leaders, the student today, tomorrow's leaders. So hopefully I will be able to go, by the way, how can I go through the slides?
Oh, sorry.
Is it somewhere
No, down here. Okay. There's a mouse or?
Yeah, okay. So I'll be talking very briefly about the changing roles of women in the GCC in general, with very specific focus on Qatar's situation as a case study, just to represent how the changing roles is taking over. Now, as a woman, we all share the same dreams. Sometimes we can face the same challenges, and to some extent, we might have also the same opportunities. But when it comes to different generations, we still might have the same common dreams, challenges, opportunities. However, it might differ from generation to another in terms of its strength and in terms of the way how do we react to it. Now, the three generations I'm talking about is my mother. She's in the top left of the slide, and then this is me in the middle and my two daughters. So my mother had a dream, so did I, and so do my daughters. My mother faced some challenges, so did I, but I'm very sure that the challenges my daughter's facing are not the same as the one I challenged and the same as my mother faced. I do have opportunities, but I'm very sure that the opportunities that my mother had were not available to her during her time, and the opportunities my daughter do have in their generation today were never ever been also available in my generation. So we all differ in terms of generation, as being a woman, in our opportunities, challenges, dreams, and confidence, our also independence, and fight for our rights. My generation fight for their rights, specifically for the political rights and for the economic empowerment. But my mother and my grandmother and so on, those generations, they didn't have to fight for their rights. Maybe because of the social, cultural dominating during that time, maybe because of they were not willing to take so over to fight for their rights. But my daughter's generation, they're so lucky because they don't have to fight for their rights, because their rights were top down to them without even going into strikes or something like this in the streets. Now, just to start with, I just would like to argue three main facts that I personally believe. And this is the three facts I would say that it applies to all women issues wherever you go, but with a special attention, as we will see. First of all, the difficulties or challenges faced by GCC women are the same challenges faced by women in elsewhere. However, it might be little bit differences when it comes to culture and change and the way how is the gender and specifically women are positioned in the culture. The second one, the gap between women and men rights, it's the most visible and most significant in the world. And whenever there is resistance, it will be the resistance how to give more rights to the women or how to empower the women. And finally, there is much confusion between what is Islam and what is culture. I'm not going to talk about these three facts and details, but I just, like to share it with you in the beginning of my speech, just to avoid any kind of confusion in these three facts, as I believe strongly in them. Now, globally, well, we can see that how internationally women really progress very well, specifically in terms of educational attainment, where today, as we can see, 65 of the high school enrolled students are females, and the same thing for the university, 39, representing 39%. But when it comes to jobs, we will still find that even though the educational attainment, they are still suffering in accessing some male-dominated positions or jobs, like the industry, like the IT, like, for example, the finance, the manufacturing, and so on. And probably this one will reflect why do we still have such very low representation of the women internationally, where currently they represent only 18% of ministries, 24 of parliamentarians, and 34 of managerial positions. This might lead us to keep arguing, but for how long do we have to argue whether gender inequality still exists across the globe, even though all of those educational attainment and women empowerment and women initiatives either taken individually or by institutions or even the government or state-led? And I will leave you this question to you to think about it till the end. Are we talking about gender equality or gender equity when it comes to women's rights? Now, moving to the other part of the world, the GCC. All of you as a Georgetown students, you must be aware that the GCC countries progress very well in terms of its political, economic, and even social infrastructure in the last 3 decades. And in such transition, no one can ignore the role played by the women, the GCC women, in these transformations. Basically, such transformation made by women, it was referred to those reasons, which really considered to be as one of the main reasons behind women empowerment in the GCC area. Political support. You can think of any country in the GCC, any country, how the women really progressed, starting from the education and the political and the economic. You will find number one behind it is the political support, the leadership, where they really encourage the women and they see them as a very active player in their societies and economy. Such support reflected in the enhanced educational attainment achieved by women, which actually was as a result of the educational reform took place in the most of the GCC countries in the mid-90s. I will give an example later about Qatari and how do they progress in their educational attainment. Again, this one also reflected in so many state-led initiatives, whether that was in the terms of legislation, policies, establishing institutions, NGOs, but a lot of support given to the women in these countries to support their empowerment. I'll go back to the women movements in a moment. And then the changing culture and social over generation. I mean, the way how I was raised culturally and socially differs from the way our daughters, and the same thing from the older generation. And I'm very sure that within 2-3 generations, such social constraint might be vanished over time. Going back to the women's movement, actually it is considered to be one of the very major, I would call it, catalysts in a way that it would really motivated women to be empowered and to ask for their rights. It begins in Kuwait and in Bahrain. I mean, the other countries, they don't have that much history, but the very well-known and obvious are in Kuwait and Bahrain. But they were really the role model where then by time it was conveyed to the other citizens. Even in the countries, like in my country, we don't have such women movement, but we have so activists, female activists, and to some extent male activists, in addition to women working in a lot of the NGOs, where they really play the role as a kind of women of movement that helped a lot in moving forward the women. Today, many of the women movements and the activists, they use a lot of social media in engaging women, in attracting the women, and even the male, the society, the media, and to some extent the policy and decision maker in being part of empowering women. Reflecting that one on the statistics, we can find, even though all of the great achievement women in the GCC achieved, still she's lacking behind in terms of the representation in the ministerial level, which is the decision and policy maker, and the same as the parliamentarian or legislative bodies. For example, with Qatar, we have, even though Qatar appointed for the first time female minister back in 1990, she was the third female minister in the GCC. We kept remaining having only one female minister every time there will be a changing or a new appointment. What we can see, for example, the highest representative is in the United Arab Emirates. When it comes to parliamentarian, also the United Arab Emirates and recently Saudi Arabia also, they consider to be high. So why is that? Is it because of social cultural reasons? Is it because of political? Is it because women empowerment is just a slogan that's been taken by the decision makers? Or is it because of the woman herself? We'll discuss this also in a few minutes. Now, let me present the very short story of Qatari women. Personally, I do believe that it is state-led empowerment. It wasn't posed by women themselves. We didn't go to the street asking for our rights. We didn't, even ask the constitution to be amended so that we can have the right to vote. It was top-down, which we were so lucky to have such political support. It started by 1999 by amending the constitution, which gave the equal right to women, either that was in responsibilities, in work employment, in education, and also in political as voting and election. Now, I have to emphasize the role played by Her Highness Sheikha Mosa as a female royal member of the ruling family, and I believe there's elsewhere in the GCC countries. She played a very significant and a very influential role in the way how did she empower women, support women, starting from the education to the employment and labor market, to the politics, to the even health and family and children issues. In doing so, there was a lot of legislation change, a lot of established legislation taken place and issued by the government, in addition to institutions like the family affairs. You might find also women department in most of the ministries that are related to women issues, like the Ministry of Development, like the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Social Services, and so on. For the first time in 2006, we have female athletes were sent and represented Qatar in the Olympic Games in London, which was before the 2012, it was taboo and forbidden. Today, we still have, be emphasized by the government itself, supporting by the community and to some extent, the citizens, how to promote women and how to promote women not only in terms of politics, economy, but recently we have witnessed also some new things taking place in Qatar, like for example, new women entering the military, new Qatari young females in the defense. Also, we will see, for example, there was appointment of the first Qatari lady, Sheikha Alia, as in the United Nations mission, and the first ambassadors. And so we have a lot of new roles taken by Qatari women. Now, whenever we would like to talk about women empowerment, I always prefer to go back to the World Forum, to the World Economic Forum, which really indicates 4 main pillars how to measure and evaluate the women's empowerment. I'll talk briefly about the economic participation in terms of the statistics and education attainment and political empowerment. I will avoid a little bit the health because it's a little bit controversial and has a lot of debates. So, Going back to the Qatari women, the first Qatar economic participation, you can see how between 2004 and 2013, the percentage of women economically active increased almost to the double, from 27.4 to 53. And this is, I mean, if we argue how educational attainment is affecting or reflecting on the economic participation of a Qatari woman, this is an excellent example. And in terms of age group, we can find also the highest percentage is among 49% among the age group 30 to 34, followed by 37, which is in the age group 25 to 29 years old. We can find also an access to new military, like there will be new female fighter pilot very soon. In 2 months she will be graduated, and she's young, less than 27 years old. There's a new specialization in terms of education that's been accessed by Qatari young females, where it used to be only male-dominated, including the engineering, as I said, including the defense and so on. And the same thing also applicable to the employment. We have also 30% representing Qatari females in the decision-making positions. And when it comes to entrepreneurs, which was recently actually empowered by the government through legislation and through facilitating, we have 13% of Qatari females owning and running a business accounted for Qatari riyal 150 millions, not millions. Okay. Now, if you go back to this slide that I'm showing, it's in Arabic because they couldn't find the translation. They didn't have actually time to translate it into English. You can see, for example, among the GCC, 47 as an economic participation is within Kuwait, but followed by Qatar 36. Even though it is less than developing countries and the OECD countries, we have to say that just after the Qatar blockade, the number was fourfold increase. And this actually I got it from His Excellency the Prime Minister, but I couldn't find any exact statistics to reflect to what extent. But he stressed this one that it was fourfold. And this one, this increase was basically in the entrepreneurship business, where women, specifically young females, establishing their own business. When it comes to educational attainment, good news is that 64% of enrolled students in the national universities, including, of course, Education City, which include Georgetown campus, are Qatari females. 70%, they represent 70% of the graduates and 23% of the higher education. Political empowerment, again, it started in 1999 with the Constitution Amendment to give the right for women to vote and elect. 2002 was the appointment of, had just said, the first female appointment Minister, Education Minister, and followed later by the Minister of Health and Minister of IT and Telecommunication. And today, again, we have a minister, only one female Minister of Health. 2003, I have to share with you the story, the very successful story. This lady on the left side, her name is Sheikh Al-Jafari. She's my cousin, by the way. She nominated herself in the first time in 1999, and no one elected her. Because, needless to say, how was the culture during that time, and how was the stereotyping regarding women. But she never gave up. She came back again in 2003, and she was the first woman to be elected in the Central Municipal Council. Till today, she is there. She had, I think, 5 times. And every time she went, and the amazing news that she is the only member of the Central Municipal Center that she has high votes for her. It ranged between 75 to 96 compared to her colleagues. So she's really considered as a good role model for the young generation. And then, of course, we started, even before 2017, we started the appearance of women specifically in the diplomatic, like ambassadors, working in the embassies outside, and also attracting so many women to the political decision-making in the ministerial level. But the problem in 2017 was I would say, the bright history of Qatari women. It was first the appointment of Lul Khader, as the first woman spoken person for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs representing Qatar. 2 days later, the 4 ladies were appointed in the Shura Council. And then, since then, we have a lot of women coming into the diplomats, into the ministry, in the military, in the defense, in all of those aspects, and domains that used to be one day male-dominated. Yet, I would say, Qatari women is still underrepresented. Maybe, because as we can see, I couldn't find the statistics in terms of decision-making classified in education, in healthcare, in military, and so on. But I know very well that we don't have that much representation. We still need to work on it. I will come back again later to this one. Now, the main challenges faced by women, whether it was in the GCC or it was in the Qatar, I think it's common and shared wherever you go through Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Oman, and so on. Political, the first challenge is in the politics. Unfortunately, there's a good percentage of women in the GCC, they are not aware about their political rights. And if they are aware, they don't have I would say, the accurate education and the training how to move forward in the political, domain. The other side of women, they are not interested in knowing, such rights, and this comes in the woman herself. They are not interested neither in empowerment nor in political, economic. They just want to, raise their families, their children, and so on. And this is the only empowerment they know. The only political and economic right is within their household, but not within their country. Some of the women also, because of their lack of self-confidence, they don't have any interest in moving forward outside of their household. And unfortunately, this is reality, even though some of them are very highly and well educated. Personally, I know one of the students, she's Georgetown graduate on Qatar campus, and she had her master also in London University, but she's not interested, not in employment, neither in going, she just had her own business, her own house, and that's it. She don't want to be empowered, and that this is the only terminology for her how to represent empowerment. The economic, unfortunately, some countries, because of their instability, specifically, they have high rate of unemployment and also poverty. It's affecting them. And instead of going and have another fight on the political side, let me have finished my fight in my daily income and so on. The media, how is the stereotyping media goes when they describe women. And for example, if you will read any investigation in any of the local newspaper that investigate women employment, you will find it mostly education, health, but nothing about military, engineering, those new areas. We have also, even though the huge progress made by the governments in the different GCC countries regarding issuing the legislation, laws, family and women laws, we still have some kind of gap in these laws, and to what extent it is really applicable today, taken into consideration. It's been developed over since decade or 2 decades or something like this. And we need also new laws to be coping with the new generation female needs. What did I miss? Now, the opportunities, this is the challenges. And by the way, if I draw it like this, it means it's still down. When I make it like straight, it means it's stable. Okay. Okay. Now, the available opportunities is, thank God, we still have political support. Changing culture is going on, and it's not going to stop. Again, do we need equity or equality? Myself, I would always prefer using equity in order to reach the balance. I don't want to be equal with my male colleague in terms of having my maternity leave. I don't want to be equal with my colleague in terms of having any other rights, working hours, or whatever. Rather, I need equity. I might have needs that my colleague, my male colleague doesn't need it, and vice versa, and so on. Now, a very interesting study that was done in 2007, I think, in Kuwait, investigating to what extent the women's right to vote was influenced by their male. And as expected, the results show that yes, they were so influenced by their male counters, husbands, brothers, and so on, to vote or to give their voice to specific male people who are nominating themselves in Kuwait. And this has really affected Kuwait, and still this is taking place as a debate in Kuwait from my knowledge, because I'm in touch with many ladies, specifically Safa al-Hashim, and even before the ladies, the first four ladies were elected. So I would really argue that women empowerment, even we have taken the excellent example of Kuwait and the other excellent example of Lebanon and Djibouti and Egypt, were those countries in the Arab region used to be the first Arab region who give the right to vote to women. So women empowerment, in terms, when it comes literally, doesn't mean their active role or their active participation in the society. Hopefully I was short enough, but not too quick. To conclude, no one can neglect and ignore the today's presence of women in different aspects of politics, economic, education, society, media, NGOs, and their active role in this. And women empowerment reached good level, and specifically in education and economy and employment. Now, yes, it is argued that there are still social constraints and challenges that really affect the women, that without the state-led initiatives and the programs and support, myself, I would never be able to be standing here in front of you and giving such a speech. But I would say that government, society, hand in hand, they still need to work together in terms of how to overcome the culture and the social constraint, which I believe still exists, and how to move forward in terms of, being away from written in a book and keep it, as on shelves, that women empowerment, and move it into reality situation. I personally also believe that we need to review the policies, we need to review the legislation. What suits my generation doesn't suit my daughters and the new generation. So we need to keep reviewing those, and we keep to update them and develop them. I would also argue for an open dialogue with all the society, including starting from the decision and the policy maker, to include and to engage women and also males in the decision-making policies, and also the society, because we are still tribal society, and you know how is tribes really affecting not only the political rights, but also the real empowerment of the women in the GCC. We need also research, we need studies that show us to what extent we are going in this right or in that right, or we need to challenge this or that. So that's why we need a lot of focus also in research. Now, the gender quota, I don't like it and I don't believe in it at all. But in situation in the GCC countries where I would say it's a modern societies and it's tribal societies, yes, we need gender quotas. Because without gender quotas, you cannot enforce the existence and the presence of women in the decision policy making, specifically in the politics. And that's why quotas shouldn't be only in the political situation or in the politics positions, but also in the economy. We need quotas in ministries positions, we need quotas in the parliaments, and so on. And finally, I will quote one of my Omani friends, where she said, when we were discussing the quota, she said there is no need for, there is a need for a quota for women because men tend to campaign as a representative for their tribes, not women. And I agree 100% with her. Thank you very much.